act out with this physical that women I don't think would ever think of doing, but as far as men go, they seem to want to act it out physically. So that physical acting always became part of these crimes. And from Olson to Blackman to the Johnson murders, this period was a very devastating time. And people often wonder, why was television so big on it? And at the time I often thought that the more we knew about it, the better off we would be. Well, looking back at that period, I think we learned a lot about sexual abuse and about what abused people will do when they want to act out. But it was a very devastating time to put your nose in there and follow the path of a killer down the riverbank where he disposed of the body, or you walk down a street where a man was standing behind a divider or standing behind a hedge, hiding, waiting for his victim. And to put yourself in that situation, and then there'd be an outline of where the victim's body was found, and you kind of looked at this scene afterwards, after they moved the body. But just going through it and understanding what was going on and bringing that information to the public was very devastating. I'm going to cut for now. Just looking back at the 70s and thinking of the amount of crime that was rampant in this one period. It was like by the mid-80s it kind of ended. And but at the time there was a lot of acting out. It was, like I say, after the days of the free love and be yourself and do your thing. But people couldn't handle the freedom. And when it came to being yourself, and you look at somebody like these criminals who had so much frustration in them and would act out in the most horrendous ways, it was unbelievable as a man to be out and then continuously having these experiences of crimes that men had committed. I can't remember any of the women that committed such crimes in this period, but it always seemed to be men. And as a man, it was devastating to think, coming home to my daughters every night and sitting at the table after these experiences and looking at these innocent faces, to think of a man committing those crimes. So it was a difficult period for me, but the adjustment was my family and nature. And coming home to my family, sometimes I was still caught up in what my day's experience was, and it was a very difficult thing to speak of, to explain a crime with innocent kids who were in their childhood, to try to bring these images. And at the time I remember eating dinner and the news would be on in the background, and I'd be listening to the voice of the reporter and the announcer covering the story that I had covered that day. And I'd let it sort of go by over my head, and wasn't much opportunity to really sit down and speak to anybody about your experiences and about how to cleanse. But coming to nature was my cleansing. So I had this power, I guess, to be able to make this transition from the jungle, the concrete jungle as we call it, and the news, and into the environment. And I would take my kids and we would go to that island and we'd go look for eagle feathers. We watch the eagles have babies, and watching the cycles of nature. And without nature, I don't think I could have survived that period. If I was bound by the city, and the thing was at that period you worked a lot of days, and then You worked a lot of overtime, and it was such a demand for the electronics, such a demand for the visuals of those days, and going live and live at the scene and live and get those shots and get those body bags. So it was a very difficult time. But I'm focusing on that area of crime in that period. Now, there were a lot of good things also happened in that time that was balancing what you were doing also.